So Lisa and Jeff, I'd be interested to know what's your experience so far with Facebook ads? How often do you run them? Or if you have run any before?
I've only run a few. I haven't had a lot of success. They seem to like to reject a lot of them. But I'm currently running one now, and I'm getting some clicks, but not a lot.
Hey, Jeff, I can tell you that rejection is not just you. You and I are getting rejected together. Almost every ad you run with them, it seems like it gets rejected. And I run mine for pre-licensing classes, so the content's a little different, but boy, they kick them back with regularity.
Yeah, I got frustrated and just gave up for a while, and then I think they even when they recommend them, they'll say, "Hey, why don't you run this as an ad?" And then you click on it, and then they say, "No, it's not going to work." So
yeah, I know it's crazy.
So they do their initial screening by computer, by bots. If you, I call it challenge it. If you say, "Hey, can you review this?" Then usually I haven't had any problem once I ask them to review it manually.
Yeah, I agree. It's just another step that, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have basically restrictions in place for housing, employment. I think they also do some for healthcare
And financial.
financial. And so they're scared to death that they're going to run afoul of legal limitations on advertising. And so what they've done is they've sort of defaulted to scorched earth approach to it, where essentially their default is to reject. And you're right, political is the other one that they're pretty strict about.
Okay.
And we have found, as you said, that if you go in and challenge, you tend to get a challenge through okay. But it's difficult to do, and it adds to the time. So if you have any time sensitive advertising you want to do on there, you're going to run into an issue of, how long is it going to take for them to approve it? Is the ad going to go through? Are we going to be okay? And so it does create a barrier just from a content standpoint where the bots are going and looking through it. Additionally, what they do when you hit one of these restricted categories is they severely limit what kind of targeting you can do.
Oh my goodness.
And so the problem with that is one of the limitations they have is geographic limitations. They won't do zip code level targeting on real estate advertising anymore. They stopped doing that a while back, actually. But nowadays, when you tell them this is a housing ad, they automatically restrict your targeting capabilities once you've told them that. Right. If you don't tell them it's a housing ad, the bots catch you. Any kind of language, they find the language, and they auto reject it. And so what you run into is a scenario where you don't really know where they're going to ding you. And so you sort of have to guess. And so we're actually finding that a lot of people are moving away from Facebook advertising for this reason. They're not going down the Facebook road because they're running into these limitations, and it's just a frustration, and they've sort of chosen not to go down that road. The downside to that is that we tend to see a higher level of, you get more for your money if you can get your ads to run on Facebook. The click-through rates are pretty high compared to other advertising that we run. The only advertising that I would say rivals Facebook as far as click-through rate compared to money you spend is probably Google AdWords advertising. And so those two areas are areas where you tend to get a pretty good click-through rate. Now, I have some doubts that CTR is really all people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I see numbers on Facebook and I go, there's no way that it's getting this level of engagement. But I will tell you that they tend to have higher engagement than a lot of different types of advertising. And so it's, Facebook is an area where your mileage may vary, and of course they make it a moving target. I feel like every time I open the Facebook interface, something has changed.
They moved that one tool where you finally
they
learned
move
where
the
it was.
tool, like where do I go to do this thing that I'm doing, and so it basically creates a challenging scenario for you. Now, one of the things that Lauren asked about, and I thought I would sort of show you guys, they do allow retargeting through Facebook. And so retargeting is an interesting strategy because based on what I've seen from Facebook's interface, if you're doing a retargeting campaign, it might open up your targeting a little bit in ways that you don't have a lot of control over, but that might be useful for you sort of moving forward. And so I thought we'd sort of dig in to try to do a retargeting campaign. I did warn Lauren beforehand that work has been a little crazy lately, so I'm a little frazzled as far as organization goes. So I'm going to apologize in advance if I end up like trying to show you how to do something that takes me 3 tries to do it. I'm going to blame Facebook's interface for that, but it's actually up here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see.
And I'll say I have the same problem you guys do. When I go back and look at my ads, about a quarter of them say rejected on them still. And about half the ones that say rejected have no money or have nothing, no extra information, and half the ones eventually went through and they have money attached to them, like clicks and things like that. So I can't figure out a rhyme or reason, especially because our stuff, we mostly advertise to you guys education things, which don't have to do with housing per se, or it's on the line. I know, but
we often forget the scary number of engineers that places like Facebook have working for them, and so when they have decided that they want to try to catch behavior that is maybe not what they want you to be doing. I know, for instance, that now both on Facebook and on Google, when you put a destination URL in on your ad, their algorithm is actually going and pinging that site and doing a scrape of that site real quick to look at what's on there. I've seen that happen before where I go and they've clearly gone and very quickly gone, and the bot has looked at the site that I'm pointing to, and they give you feedback on the site that you're pointing to. So what's happening probably is your language might not say a thing about housing or real estate or anything like that, but if the URL is far members, they're going and looking and go, well, it's like real estate. So they're going and that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've had some issues too where I've used like shortened URLs too. And if it's not our primary domain, it would say, you can't use this link this time. Sometimes I've gotten them through, but sometimes it's been like, no, not this time.
Yeah. So we're looking at my screen now. One of the things that, and Lauren did warn, this is a 102 class, not a 101 class, right? So one of the things is we don't work, typically when we're doing advertising on Facebook, we're not working in the, no offense, a dumbed down version of the ad tool. We're not dealing with boosting posts or anything like that. We're running campaigns. And so in order to do that, we've got a Facebook business account. And I would recommend if you want to do any of this stuff on Facebook, you need to get a business account. It doesn't cost anything to do a business account. You just have to sign up for it. And basically it gives you access to sort of a tools control in the back end that allows you to do some of the stuff that we're looking at today. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I've got like multiple clients in here. You're going to see all sorts of weird names and stuff. But basically inside the business account, you're going to see various things. And so for starters, let's talk about retargeting and what it is. Because I think it's important to understand exactly what the tool or what we're talking about before we go try to put it in place. So the whole concept behind retargeting is that you have basically collected information on users who have gone to your site or your Facebook page. You've collected data about them, and then you are delivering advertising to those people in another environment.
So in theory, these are warmer leads because they've seen you at least once.
They're very much warmer leads.
Okay.
And so what that means is they've either been to your site,
which that requires having the pixel installed,
yes,
so Facebook knows that they've been to your site.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. Facebook doesn't know by default where people go on the web. But they want to, they very much want to, right? And so how do they get that data? Well, they get that data a couple of different ways. One is they are engaging in banner ad activity outside the Facebook universe, okay? They don't advertise this greatly, but clearly they are engaging in advertising networks. So if you go to a WashingtonPost.com and you see a banner ad on the site, I can tell you there's no doubt in my mind that Facebook is playing in that space. And the reason they're doing that is basically when you see an ad on a website, you're getting a cookie on your browser, what's called a third-party cookie on your browser, that they can use to then track your activity across other parts of the web. And so that is one way that Facebook is gathering data on users. The second way is, as you described, what they call the Facebook pixel. And so the Facebook pixel is a little bit of code that goes onto your website, and it basically is a third-party cookie, just like what the advertising networks are using, but it is a direct communications pipe to Facebook. And it is basically gathering data from your browser on who you are. Well, it gathers any data it can from your browser on what you're currently doing. It's writing that data to a cookie, and it is then sharing that information with Facebook. Now, it's really important to understand that there's only certain data that these cookies can collect, these pixels can collect. But what you're doing when you decide to sort of play in Facebook's world and put this pixel on your website is you are giving Facebook a high degree of visibility on what people are doing on your site. I think it's important to understand that. Now, what's the benefit? Well, the benefit is you're gathering data on those users, which you can then use to target advertising to those users. And so basically what you're doing is you're saying, oh, I saw you. I know you were on my site. I can then go on Facebook's world and I can deliver advertising to you. Now, they're not the only ones doing this. Google is of course, big player in this world, bigger than Facebook is. They are doing their cooking in lots of different ways.
And Google's is also called a pixel, though, isn't it?
It is possible to put a Google Pixel on your site, but Google's funny because they don't really need to.
Okay.
Google,
the benefits of being a search engine.
Yeah, well, I think this is the key, right? With Facebook and increasingly now with Google, they have a piece of data that for the longest time we haven't had, which is you are logging in with information. And so in the past, call it 10 years ago, we could gather a lot of this data about users, and we could cookie browsers, and we could deliver advertising to browsers as they were going across things. But there's a huge difference between a cookie that I put on because you've just been browsing the web and a cookie that I put on that connects back to a logged in user that I know who that person is. Why is there a difference? Well, it's because if you log into Facebook on your laptop, or you log into Facebook on your phone, or you log into Facebook on any other device, I know exactly who you are across different platforms.
Right.
In the old anonymous cookie world, I wasn't able to do that. And so I couldn't do cross-browser data collection, which meant that I didn't really know what people were doing from one device to the other. Now with Facebook, they know when I'm on the phone, they know when I'm on the computer. It was really funny when I was logging in earlier, it two-factor authenticated me, and what did it do? Well, it sent me a text to my phone, and so clearly, they know who I am, they know where I am. They're getting geo data on me right now. And so all of this data gets collected by those pixels. And so they're using them for their own sort of advertising targeting purposes. And they can be very accurate with that because we are logged in. This goes right back to the restrictions on housing, right? Why are they so sensitive about it? Well, it's possible, it would be possible with the data that Facebook has to very, very easily target discriminatory advertising around real estate. It would be dead to do that. And in fact, you used to be able to do it.
Right.
You used to be able to go in there and you could do the kinds of targeting that would eliminate audiences from ever seeing your advertising. It was simple. And so what they've done is they've sort of adjusted the opposite direction to be able to do that. But they're collecting language data on your browser. So if you're a primarily Hispanic, if you visit a lot of Hispanic language sites, they know that.
Yeah.
And so they make inferences from their data about who you are from that kind of information.
Talk to somebody's financial
say,
level.
Have you noticed any differences from the Apple OS changes?
We're not seeing significant changes right now from Apple's changes. So Apple's gotten more private in what kind of data they're able to share. I will tell you that in the world that I live in, we are anticipating over the next year a fairly significant, next year, 2 years, a fairly significant tightening down of the kind of targeting we're going to be able to do because of increased privacy concerns. We think third-party cookies are going away eventually. And so what that will mean is the ability to do some of the targeting that we
Sorry, I should have.
It looks like we lost Kevin. We just have Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff, can you see me okay? Can you see us okay?
I can see you now. You just came back. You guys were all gone for about 3 minutes or so, and I think people bailed.
Okay, sorry about that. Well, where we are, we basically are trying to get to this audiences page, which is where you can go and create an audience. And so an audience is a group of people, okay? And Facebook has this concept of audiences that you can generate that have lots of different sort of data that's collected around those audiences. And in order to do that, we actually have to create a pixel that we're going to put on our websites before we're able to do the retargeting, okay? And so now that I'm in the audience page, you see on the left-hand side, there's a little gear here, and it's the business settings. And on this business settings page, there are a lot of different settings here, but you'll see that one is called data sources and pixels. And so this actually gives you, this is where you can go and create a pixel, essentially. So I can go and add a new pixel. And yeah, does it work? Yeah.
No, just the animation with the pixel.
Yeah. So basically you are, you can call it example pixel, whatever. You can put a pixel on more than one site, so you can collect data across multiple sites. You can give it a website address if you want to. We'll just make that register today pixel. And we'll go to continue. And it asks, am I ready to set up my pixel? Yeah, I think I'm ready to set up my pixel. And then it basically says it looks like your business might be using one of these partners. If you have one of these accounts, you can select a partner to set up the pixel without editing your website's code. So if your site is on WordPress or your site is on Google Tag Manager, you can actually click these, and what it's going to do is there's like a plugin you can install that will go onto your website and actually install the code where it needs to go using the plugin. And so
That's
if I,
convenient.
Do what?
That's convenient.
It is, and it's probably the easiest way to do it. There will be some back and forth logging in to be able to do it. Alternatively, you can go to setup manually. And actually, I do it manually now. And because I find it fairly easy to do it manually. So basically, what you get is you get a little chunk of code, okay? And so I'm going to copy the code. And then it says turn on automatic advanced matching, use information that your customers have already provided to your business, such as their email addresses or phone numbers, to match your website's visitors to people who are on Facebook. I don't want to turn that off. I want to leave that on because I'm trying to track these people. So when I go and copy this, what I then do is I go over to my website, and I'm just going to log in to my website is on the website I'm demoing here is on WordPress. Okay. And so I'm going to show you a couple ways in WordPress to do this. One is to just do the plugin. That's an easy way to do it. But I like knowing what's going on my site. So I'm actually kind of geeky about this. So in WordPress, a lot of times people will have some sort of design tool that's set up that makes it easier to design the site. We use one called Divi, okay? And so yeah, so if you've used Divi before, I'll show you in Divi. If you go down on the left hand side here and you go to theme options, there's a section here called integration. And you'll see that there are little sections here that say add code to the head of your blog, add code to the body, good for tracking codes such as Google Analytics. Okay, so what I can do is I can paste onto that page the code, the Facebook pixel code. And what that will do is that will make this show up on every page of my site. Okay. And so if you're using a tool like Divi, Visual Composer, any of the standard WordPress builder tools, somewhere in their configuration, there's going to be a tab that says something like integration or add code to the head of my site. And that's where you can go and paste this, and it will show up everywhere on the site. I'm double checking to make sure that I don't currently have a pixel on Fred today, which I do actually have one pasted in. I'll tell you that where I posted it at the bottom here is the right place to put it, but before I put it up there. So I'm not actually going to save this change because I don't want 2 pixels firing. You can, the Facebook pixels, it will let you have more than one on a page. Google is kind of quirky about that, but the Facebook one is fine. But you would paste that there. Now, if you are not using something like Divi, Visual Composer, one of those two, the other way to do this is if you go to Appearance and Theme File Editor. What you'll do is you'll get your theme files on this this screen, and usually there's a file called header.php. Okay. That header.php file is basically the code for the top of your site, and almost every theme has a header.php file. And what you can do is, if you look in there, you're looking for head. Okay, and you can paste this anywhere inside. Where's the end of the head code? There, right there is the head. Okay. So you see that there's a little section in here that says head. You could actually go in here and paste it in there.
Gotcha.
And it will work fine on all the pages of the site. Okay. Now, once you've got that pixel in there, Facebook will start tracking you. Okay. And what will happen is, let's see if we go back here. If I had pasted this, I can actually enter the URL for the site and hit send test traffic. Once I save that on there, if I hit send test traffic, Facebook actually goes and it pings the site, and then it checks the pixel to see whether it worked.
Gotcha.
And you'll see that it's there. Okay. So that's step number 1, is you've got to get the pixel on the page. Once you've got the picture on the pixel on the page, it's going to start collecting data on your audience. Now, let's think about this for a second. We want to retarget, okay? And we want to run a campaign, and we want to run a budget against that campaign. So we're actually going to be spending money. Well, if you put the pixel on today and you buy ads today, you are basically spending money on a very, very small audience, because it's anybody who's gone from today point to later today when you got the ad running. Right. You're basically collecting this data. So what you're going to find is you're not actually going to get a whole lot of advertising traffic because you don't have a big audience. Okay. So what I would recommend doing is, as soon as you can, if you don't already have one, put a pixel on your website and let it start collecting data.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have one, you want to do that. That needs to be kind of your first step, because that's going to allow you to do the next thing we're going to do, which is define an audience. Okay. So I'm going to go to, I'm actually going to go back. Hopefully. Again, I'm just going to click on this and see if it's working. Okay. So now I've gone back to the home page of business, and let's see if I can work with somebody see if I can find my friend today. See if we can get it to play nice. So I've got my pixel. I'm collecting data. That doesn't mean I have an audience. I just have data. Okay. So my next step is I want to actually create an audience. And so in order to do that, if I'm logged in here, I go to the All Tools tab. Okay. And in this tab, there's a link to do audiences. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an audience. And I'm going to create a custom audience. Okay. Now it's going to say choose a custom audience source, which means I can choose from all sorts of different places. I can choose a Facebook page. I can choose an Instagram account, on Facebook listings, shopping. I can choose any of these things as a place to draw people from. If I want to use my pixel that I put on my website, I need to check website. Okay. Now, it is actually letting me create a new pixel here. Didn't realize it was going to do that. Let's see what it does. Okay, so basically what it did was it bounced me over here, and I should. It's not grabbing my pixel list for some reason. But basically what the pixel will show up here in source. Okay. And then I can say include people who meet any of the following criteria. I can say all website visitors. I can say people who visited specific web pages. Okay. Okay. So I can create an audience for people who are on certain pages and not other pages. And also visitors by time spent. I only want to target people who've been on my site for more than 10 seconds, 15 seconds, or whatever. And I can give it a name, and I can give it a description. Okay.
So based off that one pixel, you can create multiple audiences then.
Exactly.
Say, for example, we want to create an audience for each page.
Yeah.
On your website.
Yeah.
Or if you got.
That's something I don't think I've ever done. I think we installed the pixel, but I just had some old audiences that I've been using for a long time.
Yeah. So let's say that you cover 3 different distinct geographic areas, and you have different areas on your site for each of those 3 distinct geographic areas.
Right.
Well, you might want to make an audience for each of those.
Okay.
I mean, for that matter, you could make an audience for people who look at an individual listing. And so you could actually say, I want to target only the people who looked at this $2 million listing I've got and deliver to those folks. Okay. And so basically what happens is you are creating an audience, and as your pixel gathers more data, those people get added to this audience. So
Okay.
it is a dynamic thing that you're adding to the site. Okay. Now, once that audience is there, you can then run an ad campaign against the audience. So we'll look at that in a second.
Okay.
I do want to show you on the create audience thing. There is a lookalike audience. So if you basically you can select an existing audience that you already have. So like a site that you already like. They have other pages like that. You can say, I want an audience that looks like the people who are going to this page. Okay.
Gotcha.
So that doesn't mean they're people who went to the page. It means that people who behave like the people who went to that page.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the trick. If you do this lookalike audience and you try to target real estate advertising to it, it's probably not going to let you.
Okay.
Okay. So you'll see that when they go to create audience, there's actually a special ad audience
Okay.
that's specifically designed for people in special categories. Okay. And so when you go there, it's only available for ads, special ad category. And basically you can select an existing audience or data source. Okay. So we see pages here. I can pick a page. Purchase for today. And then I can select an audience location, but it's only going to let me say United States. It won't let me dig any deeper there.
Wow, you can't even do state?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not to make
Not
the
for
audience.
lookalike.
Not to make
Okay.
the audience. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's telling you estimated reach, but that's not right, because if I go, my little zoom bar is in the way here. When I go to create this audience, you'll see that what it's done is it's said, I'm going to look in the United States and I'm going to take the percentages that I gave it and I'm going to estimate how big the audience size is that I will be able to deliver. Okay. Now, bear in mind that the data source, I just sort of picked that data source out of the air. So it was that's not actually coming from my real pixel. And so basically I've got my audience now. Okay. So got my pixel, got my audience. My head hasn't exploded yet. Now I want to actually run an ad. Okay. So I'm going to go, see if we can go back to this is my problem, is getting back to where I want to go to actually, create my ad. I keep moving my zoom control
Right over
the
where
thing
you
I
need
to
it.
click. Yeah. So I'm going to go create an ad. And basically I can choose a goal. So let's say my goal is to.
Now that gets started with automated ads. Is that their dynamic creative ads? Is that what that's pushing?
Yeah, they all adjust every time. I haven't actually been making automated ads because I want to know what the ad's going to look like.
Yeah.
But we could say, I don't know.
So what are the difference in these? The get more leads, is that still the lead contact info, or it asks for their email?
It asks for their email. It gathers the data on them. Yeah. I'm just going to say promote my page. Let's see if we can. So here's where I would say special ad category. But I should be able to say people I choose through targeting.
Ooh, vintage.
Why is it not letting me? Yeah, sorry, this is a great example of it's now gone into it. ad dialogue. It's not the one that's the same one that I did last time I did. Please hold. Let me go back. Sorry. The problem is I'm bouncing around between accounts here, and I'm scared that I make an audience in the wrong place. Let's see.
Right? Or GW Ride Virginia's got to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to Ads Manager, which is where I normally add these. This should let me do it, hopefully.
Yeah, the Ads Manager is confusing that it's set apart from the Business Manager.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we want traffic ad. I'm not going to choose a special ad category, though I could. All right, so new traffic campaign, go to next. This is what I was expecting to see. Choose where you want to drive traffic. I want to drive it to my website. I want to, optimize for link clicks. I want to give it a budget. I want to start.
So with a budget, will you typically run daily budgets or lifetime?
No, I usually do a lifetime budget.
Okay.
So I go in here and I give it a lifetime budget, and then I give it a start and a stop date.
Got it.
Usually what I do is I do a monthly campaign, and that way I know what I'm spending. Facebook is very good at delivering to your budget. Google is a little squirrely sometimes on how much it delivers per month. And Google doesn't let you do a lifetime budget. They let you have to do a daily budget.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see. So, okay, so here we go. Audience. Use saved audience, and then I can go grab a custom audience that I've already created to deliver to. Actually, yeah, so custom audience. Again, I'm flipped accounts, I think, so it doesn't have the
Well, it was
audience.
weird that I have it
create.
in the section right above, but not in the section right below.
Yeah,
right?
I'm
It's
not sure why.
it's saved and not. Maybe you can't do a lookalike of a.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm not sure. I think I might have been in GW Ride Connect before, and then I swapped over to this one. But it should be showing up on the list here. It'll be easier for people who are doing this who don't have 30 different
Multiple
accounts
accounts.
they're running.
Right.
Me, I'm sort of always chasing my tail to get in there. So basically, you go in there and you pick that audience, and that campaign is going to deliver just to that audience. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you have created, let's say, 4 custom audiences, what does that mean from a campaign standpoint? Well, you're going to need 4 campaigns. You're going to need one for each of those. And what I recommend doing is you want to tailor your messaging on those ads to what you know these people have already done, which is they visited that page on your site. So you want to say, hey, what I typically do is I show a picture that already exists on the page that they went to, so they have that visual recognition.
Yeah, I saw that.
I really
Right.
was
Want
there.
more like this?
Yeah,
Question mark.
Exactly. Yes, yeah. And so that's how I tailor my messaging. And the problem with that is the traffic on these retargeting ads is not going to be thousands and thousands of people, unless your website's getting thousands and thousands of people. It's not going to be huge.
Right.
So one of the little problems with this is, well, how do I budget for it? If I've got 4 different custom audiences, how am I going to set my budget to go to 4 different people? And what you got to do is, I think, run a test campaign and then ramp on the test once you've got it running. And you can always go into Facebook and you can increase your budget and jack up the amount of deliveries it's going to do. But the problem is you could very easily get sideways by not paying careful attention to what your budget is for each of these campaigns. And you really do want to know, okay, I want to spend X amount.
How much am I
on this.
spending?
And does it make sense to use the built-in A/B testing for that, or to kind of do
I
a fake
don't.
little short
I don't,
campaign
because
run
the
first?
A/B is really designed to test 2 creatives on the same campaign. It's not going to let you put 2 audiences on there. Okay. So all it's going to do is say this ad is being received better than this ad is being received. So you're actually going to have to run multiple campaigns. You can't A/B an audience. You're
Mhm.
testing against the same audience when you do the A/B. But definitely, I would say, run a lighter weight test on this. We do know that retargeting campaigns work because there's already interest there. They cannot be, in my opinion, your sole advertising approach.
Yeah.
The volume is just not there. And also, you got to get people to the page in the first place, right?
Right.
And so always, like when we're doing a campaign for somebody, we almost always include a retargeting campaign, and we never make that the only campaign. We are always doing something in conjunction with that. And the thing you're doing in conjunction with it doesn't have to be a Facebook campaign.
Mhm.
It can be lots of different kinds of advertising that you do to get people into the site. Lauren, we talked about this a little bit. Or I sort of mentioned that one of the things I wanted to talk about is Facebook is working for a certain demographic. Younger users who are increasingly getting to the age of being home buyers are not necessarily Facebook users.
Mhm.
I feel old saying it, but if you're upper 20s, you may not be a Facebook user at all. You might not have ever been one. And so what we're finding is we're having to be a little more comprehensive on where we're advertising. Typically, we'll include Facebook as part of a campaign, but it's not always everything we do. And so I'll tell you one thing that we've been doing lately that has been, we're seeing very good click-through consumption rates on, and I have a theory as to why. I say click-through. It's not. I'm not so worried about the click-through. So let me spin a yarn for you for a second. One of the things we've always known about digital advertising is getting click-throughs is tough because people don't really want to leave what they're doing to go see something else, and so they tend to not click through. And so that's why you see on a typical ad campaign, you're getting a less than 1% click-through rate. And that's always concerned us a bit, but until fairly recently, you've not had a whole lot that you can do about it. It was not, it was hard to deal with. But there's this new-ish kind of advertising now called native advertising. So native advertising is typically the creative that you're using is going to be text-based with images. It looks more, it's funny, we were looking at the AI writing before. It's more like a story about something with images attached to it that people can then consume. And what happens is when you buy native advertising, you buy it on a network of publishers who are willing to run native ads. And depending on who the publisher is, it might just be a headline and a summary and a picture that links off to your site. But some publishers will actually wrap the whole story in their look and feel. And it'll be marked as advertising, but it looks like it came from them. And so if you're reading CNN and you see native advertising, you get it in a CNN wrapper, okay? So it looks like something that CNN had a role in producing, even though it is clearly communicated that's advertising. It looks like it's got their seal of approval. Okay.
Probably not unlike that blueprint recipe you're showing us there at the end. Like they approve the ads and it goes into the recipe and it formulates.
Absolutely. So what does this mean? Well, it creates a really interesting scenario for your messaging because it gives you a way to get messaging in front of people that does not require them to click through to another site, which means that they may be more inclined to read and consume that advertising messaging because you're giving it to them in a way that doesn't require them to change behavior, okay? And so that's the whole promise, essentially, of native is give them a way to consume your content without making them go to your site, okay? And what have we found? Well, believe it or not, it works. We're seeing a couple of things happen. Number one, we're seeing exceedingly high, you can basically you can dashboard this stuff,
Mhm.
so you can see what people are reading. We're seeing very high read rates on these ads, like surprisingly high.
I think that's surprising because most people don't want to read,
The sponsored
But they
content.
do.
right?
Yeah, people read more than you think they do.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so surprisingly high read rates. Oddly, higher click-through rates than we're seeing on banner ads that we're running at the same time. So I'll give you an example, and this is one that I'm always willing to give examples for people who are government agencies, because you could always FOIA the information and get it from the first place. So I do some work with tourism, economic development tourism groups, and I'm doing some campaigns. We've been doing some campaigns for the past 3 or 4 months for a local tourism entity. We were simultaneously running programmatic banner advertising. So programmatic banner advertising, if you don't know the term, is targeted digital advertising that is basically running across a network of websites, and it's targeted based on people's behavior. So if I see that you are currently showing behavior that you're shopping for a home, I can run programmatic against your behavior and get banner ads in front of you because I know you're shopping for a home. And by the way, I don't have the same restrictions I have on Facebook. So we've been running programmatic, and we've been using the same targeting criteria to run native. And our native ads are outperforming our programmatic in a way that's so significant that we pulled our programmatic advertising for at least 2 of the categories we're running in and replaced that spend with a native spend. So we took the money we were spending on banners and we moved it over to native. And there were a couple reasons we did that. One was the CTRs were higher, the click-through rates were higher, and we like seeing good click-through rates. The second thing was we are, with that particular client and with more people that I'm working with, we are trying to change people's mindsets about their advertising. And what we're trying to do is say, if we're only getting a 1% CTR, and we know that only 1% of our people who view our ads are actually going to the web page, at some point, what's the old saying? If at first you don't succeed, try again, then quit. No use being a damn fool about it. What we have really concluded is, look, people just don't click on banner ads, but they certainly view them. So what strategies can we take to get messaging in front of people that is enough messaging to get them closer to me, to doing business with me, even if I know they're not going to immediately click through. And so how are we doing that? We're doing more native advertising. We're making sure that our banner ads, if we have the option to do big banner ads, we're using it. And we're making sure we've got sufficient content that maybe rotates through on the banner ads so we can see those. We're doing what are called HTML5 banner ads that let people interact with the ad itself. So an example might be from a real estate standpoint. Let's say your banner ad is made, it's like a little mini web page. It's made of HTML, and it's got 4 or 5 homes flipping through on the banner ad itself. And there's a little drop down or a form, a contact form on the banner ad that you can go fill out and say, hey, tell me more about this house. So that's another strategy we're taking. A third strategy we're taking is we're moving more into video advertising content. So we do a lot now. We're starting to really get into doing more what they call OTT, over the top streaming ads. So those are ads that run on Hulu, certain Amazon video channels, any video platform that allows advertising on the platform. You can buy streaming video advertising on those platforms in a way that back in the TV days you could never afford. That's been the problem with TV in the past. You know, if you're an agent, you're not spending money for a TV ad. It's way too expensive. Well, with OTT, as long as you can get some video done, and by the way, the video doesn't have to be real video. It can be slideshows of homes and pictures. We call it the Ken Burns effect. We got the picture that moves around here. And so that video content people are seeing it because so many people cut the cord, or they're not getting cable.
Right.
They're streaming most of their entertainment online, and so here's a way to get your content in front of people. And it's, again, that video format gives you more time and more space to show content than what you've been able to do with traditional banner advertising in the past. And so we're trying to move people to this mindset of, look, click-throughs are great, but click-throughs are not everything. And so it's kind of funny, with a lot of my clients now, we're, when we start talking about metrics around how we're doing, it used to be the only metrics we would look at is website traffic. And that was living in a click-through world, where like, if it doesn't click through, it doesn't really matter. And where we are now is, look, we need to talk about ad impressions and how are we increasing the number of times these ads are seen. We need to look at when we buy ads from someone. So let's say you're buying an ad from a publisher, like a news site, a radio station site, whatever, email, newsletter. I'm like really encouraging my clients now to look at where they're buying and say, where is the ad on the page? And can you guarantee me that the ad that I'm buying is inside or adjacent to content that people are actually looking at? In other words, I would never spend a dime on an ad if I knew that it was on the footer of a website all the way at the bottom, of a news website all the way at the bottom. If that's the only place my ad's showing up, I'm not spending money. So when you go and you buy an ad, you need to ask a question like, all right, where are these things going? Am I in the top? I don't have to be in the top screen, but I have to be somewhere in the eye view of people. And
3/4 of the way down, and they're
right,
done,
exactly.
moving on.
And so the flip side of this, because I do work with different clients, is I'm talking to my publishing clients and I'm saying, look, if you have an ad position on the bottom of the page, just footer position on the page, what good is that? That has no value to your advertiser. So why do you even have an ad position there? Like, if you're going to put ad positions in place, you got to put them where they need to be. We're actually looking at doing a redesign of Register today right now. We're going to try to move some stuff around because I'm getting more advertiser interest in that site. And what I don't want is people buying ads from me and having them not work. And so we're doing things like trying to figure out where we can move some of the ads around. The other thing that we're doing, and we have been doing for a while, is an advertising idea of picture headline content, because people are that they tend to respond better to something that looks a little more article-y, that has a headline, that has some text. And what does that mean for you guys? Well, it goes right back to the AI discussion. It's the kind of tool that you really want to use, because you got to generate content frequently enough that there's fresh enough stuff that people are seeing something new. And you got to make it compelling.
Right.
I mean, I can see. I don't have anybody. Full disclosure, I don't have an agent or broker right now who is an advertising client. Okay. If I did, what would I be doing with them? I would probably do some of the retargeting on Facebook. I would be making sure that they were posting pictures and descriptions every time they got a new listing, and probably get those on a recurring basis. But I would probably, if they had budget to spend, try to talk them into doing some native, where they were doing an actual 5, 6, 7 paragraph really deep dive into this is what this house is like, this is what the yard looks like, this is what the kitchen looks like, this is what this looks like. Give it some flair, give it some excitement, put some pictures around it. But I would be doing that. I would be creating native content around that. And the cool thing is, if you do that, you can use the same content on your website.
Right.
You know? But take that content, stick it in a native ad and run it for those people who never actually end up on your site. Make sure it's got good contact information for you attached to the bottom of it, right? And then if you had a little bit more budget, then I would say, okay, let's talk about OTT and streaming. And how can we turn these listings into streaming ads that people will see on video, or even as a lead in to YouTube. Now, the magic length for streaming is 15 seconds, which is not a lot of time. You can do 30 seconds, but typically what we recommend is you do both. Do a 15 and a 30. You run the 30s where you're able to, but you run the 15s in places like YouTube. And with 15 seconds, you can highlight 2 to 3 houses.
Yeah,
3's pushing
that's
it.
quick. Yeah.
3's pushing it. Probably
Blink quickly.
Probably 2. But I would be wrapping my marketing strategy around content that people can see in multiple places and consume in multiple places, as opposed to going all in on one platform.
On one channel.
Yeah. And that's and that's why I go back to back to the beginning of this discussion about Facebook. They're not making it easy.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I would encourage people to do is, if you have a limited budget, which let's be honest, we all do, and you're going to spend money on advertising, I would, these days, I would focus my, what I call organic energy on Facebook. Make sure you're creating compelling enough listings that they get shared. Do a little bit of boosting if you can make it work. Do a little bit of advertising if you can make it work. Do the remarketing, because the remarketing is a good way to know that you've got a better chance of getting in their news flow than a lot of these others, and you've got a little more control over your targeting. But
don't rely on the click-through rates and know that all of this will
Don't.
change 5 minutes from now.
Absolutely.
Especially if
Absolutely.
cookies are on the way out, third-party cookies especially.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. With Facebook's current restrictions on your ability to target, I have a hard time committing much budget to it for these special categories. I have a hard time doing it because I feel like the world I've lived in for the past several years has been trying to eliminate as much advertising spend waste as I can. In other words, if I'm going to spend and I know I have access to targeting capabilities, I want to make sure that as many of my dollars go to the audience I'm looking for as I can. The old saying, I know that 50% of my advertising works, I just don't know which 50%. And so I'm trying to get that number. I'm trying to get to a point where I can say, I know 65% of my advertising works. I know 75% works because I've got data that shows me what it's doing and what kind of click-throughs I'm getting. That I'm trying to get to that point. And the problem is these guys are making it real hard for me to know that what I'm doing is getting in front of the people that I need, that I need on my content.
But I think the other thing, when I talk to other agents, is when they say whether or not it's successful or unsuccessful, is they don't have an idea of what their goal is.
Oh, yeah.
For example, if they're doing branding and they're expecting leads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they have to
Not
understand.
quite the same.
Not the same.
They don't jive together,
Right.
really.
You have to do branding, and if it's just a branding ad and you got recognition, then that's great. That's what's working.
Mhm.
Coca-Cola doesn't stop branding, right?
Right.
But if you're doing lead generation, then you have to have the strategies behind the lead generation in order for it to be successful. Instead of assuming that, I put out this thing and it did work. Well, where's your goal?
Right. You're absolutely right. So I tell people all the time, like, if you're doing a branding campaign, you ought to not even look at your CPR. because if you're doing a branding campaign and your creative is good, if they don't currently need you, they're not going to click through to your site. But if they need you 6 months from now, if you did a good branding campaign, they're going to think of you, and then they're going to go look at your site, and that's not going to be a direct CTR. But yes, you're right. If they're doing lead gen, there better be numbers, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. And so this isn't the world you guys live in, but when I talk to retail clients, this is the conversation I have with them. Like, okay, tell me what your typical ticket is, typical receipt is on an online sale. Let's say that you're a gift shop downtown and you sell gift baskets. And you tell me, okay, my typical sale is $150. That's an average close on somebody buying stuff. Then we should be able to look at our advertising that we're doing to try to sell product. And you can back into the math and say, because you can track all of this, right? Using Google Analytics on an e-commerce site, or using it on a lead gen site that you've got the form, and that's your goal, is to get a form submission for the lead. You can backtrack that math back to the spend you made on your ads. And so I worked for a company one time that was spending about $1 million a month on Google advertising. Okay, they were spending about $1 million a month. They were making about $998,000 a month on the product that they were selling. I'm pulling these numbers out of the air, but I will tell you that the scale is correct. Okay?
Gotcha.
And so, guess what? When that's what the math is on your ad spend, ultimately you go out of business.
Right.
And so you have to be able to do that math if you're doing lead gen, if you're doing retail commerce, that kind of thing. If you're doing branding, the branding math you have to do is, look, I feel like I need to be seen by X number of people over a certain number of time. And most people who do successful branding will tell you they see a noticeable decline over time in reaction, in cold calls in when they cut the branding back. And it's like you said with Coke. Coke continues branding even though everybody knows what a Coke tastes like.
Right.
And they do that because they want to stay top of mind. And for the business that you guys are in, again, a huge number of people out there are in what I would call passive home shopping mode. They're not necessarily in need to sell or buy right now, but they may be in the next 6 months, they may be in the next year. And so what have you done to get in front of those people so they think of you when it's time? And some people in this market are doing a great job of doing that, some are not. I think some of the folks, the folks that I know that are heavily involved in FAR, like I know who they are, not just because I'm involved in FAR.
Gotcha.
I know who they are because I see them out in the world, and I know that they're branding themselves, and they are people I would be more inclined to go talk to when I'm ready to sell or buy,
Right.
Because they're making themselves visible out there. And then when I get into buying mindset, that's when I'm looking for, oh, that's a cool picture of a house. That might be one I'm interested in. Let me go check that out. When I'm even in warm buying mode, when maybe I haven't found an agent yet, but I'm starting to think about it. I mean, we all know, we all know the shopping patterns change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's the dynamic has changed significantly.
So I have a question in relation to the Facebook pixel and then the conversion events, that the 8 that it limits you to with the new whatever they're doing. Does it make sense to have for realtors to have multiple conversion events. That's not like they're selling a product or anything. So a little different, there's not really a checkout page unless they're downloading like a guide or, I think those would be some of the more common pages realtors would have on their site to direct people towards.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when I start thinking about conversion in this world, in the real estate world, it really is that lead form completion. Okay, so we always kind of joke it's the thank you page on the form. It's the page, because that's usually where you put your conversion tracker is on the thank you page, because that's when you know that the form has been completed and the email's been sent out of WordPress or whatever you're using. So typically we'll tag that page as where the conversion.
So
happens.
it's another piece of code.
Yeah, there's a little bit
that's
of
what I
code,
didn't realize.
Yeah, so in the pixel, there's a thing called an event, and there's an event tag that you can put in. Now, I'm not sure on the Facebook one, but I'm betting it will do this. I know on Google's, because they're collecting data on every page, if you know what the thank you URL is on Google's platform, you can actually use it when you're setting up an analytics. You can set up a conversion, and you can say, I want it to be this URL. And Google,
so anytime it generates that
yeah,
page,
so in Google Analytics, it'll be
it.
like, oh, okay, they've set up thankyou.html as the conversion page, so I know because I'm already collecting data on that page. I don't know the answer, to be honest, whether Facebook's Pixel is doing the same thing, but I'd be shocked if it wasn't. But back before they were doing that, and still now, you can put an event on a page, and an event is just a little piece of code, goes on the page when the page gets opened, and you can attach these events to button presses and other activities on the site too. And so so you have to put that on the to track the thing. But yeah, I think for what you guys are doing, you generally are only creating a different conversion if there's some totally different action people are taking. So if you were maybe they were requesting download a guide to picking the best home, and it's some download you had available, then yeah, maybe you want to make that a different kind of conversion because you're collecting different data a different way. Or you could have a conversion that is buyers and sellers, like a separate conversion for those two. And that way you could track and say, okay, this is what's working for me to get new buyers, this is what's working for me to get new sellers, because those strategies are different. Tracking those differently probably makes sense, but I don't think you're going to need to go over 8. And even for commerce sites, I think it's still considered one conversion because it's the sale. So on a commerce site, what happens is the conversion goes after the sale goes through, and it puts their receipt up on the screen. That's when they get registered as a conversion.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but conversions, you were talking about leads before.
Yeah.
That's how you track those. If you have conversion tracking, then when you run these advertisements, you can see how did I acquire that customer who went through to the end and saw a buy, basically.
Not just everybody that got to the form, because everybody doesn't always
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You want to know who went
You're not
all
a
the way
lead
through.
until I have your email address.
Right.
And
I know there's some interest. Maybe I might call you, might not answer, but I know there's some interest. Better than somebody who just breezed past it. So
one thing, and I think I've said this to this group before, but it's been a while since we've seen each other. I'm a big fan of on your contact forms not going nuts with what you're trying to collect. A lot of people like, I want to know what neighborhood they want to be in. I want to know this and that and that. And I always go back to a conversation I had with Joe Wilson from PermaTreat, who's retired now, but I had a conversation years ago with Joe about PermaTreat and termite treatments. And you asked, or you were talking earlier about people who knew what their goal was, and Joe, PermaTreat did a lot of digital advertising even years ago, and Joe said, look, if I want to get a termite contract, it's going to take me at least 2 phone conversations to get a termite contract. That's just the way it is. He said sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 5, but the average is 2. And so he said, so when we're doing this advertising, I've got to get those folks on the phone the first time so I can get to the second time so I can close them. And so that's always stuck in my mind, because what I tell people now is, look, you give them 30 fields to fill out, you still don't have them as a customer.
Right.
So why are you putting barriers in their way to getting you an email address or a phone number? You know, you need to take as much friction out of that form as you can, so you get them to fill it out. You know, we used to joke, like, addresses and stuff, unless we were giving a prize that we had to mail to you, we knew about 50% of the addresses we were going to get were not going to be good.
Right.
You know, but you know, back in the day when I was working in the newspaper, or we would have contests and stuff like that, we're like, well, we know it's a contest and we've got to mail them tickets that'll give us the right address. And so we're willing to put the full address on the form only because we've given them incentive.
Right. Can't see any tickets.
Yeah.
Don't put the right address.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even then they'd give you the wrong address. But
Yeah.
That's a whole nother. Should we see if people have questions?
Yeah. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Sandra.
Any questions?
No questions for me. I guess my only question is, did you guys record this or no?
Yes, we did. So I'll have
Awesome.
that probably tomorrow available for anyone who wants it.
It's recorded for posterity, me fumbling around in the back end of Facebook trying to figure out where they move things now.
No, it was great. Thank you. I just wanted, it was fast, and I was trying to follow it on my computer, but I wasn't able to keep up. So I'd love to be able to watch it again. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I know you joined on a little bit late, Sandra.
Yes, I was having a lot of trouble with the internet. Unfortunately, I missed most of it, and I was so eager to hear the whole thing, but I'm glad to know that it's going to be there for me to have access to it. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And so sorry, I forgot to leave the mic on mute.
That's fine. Do you have any things that you're trying to accomplish right now on your own efforts?
Well, not really. I'm pretty much new to everything. So to me, any information, any new ideas to develop the business is just welcome. And pretty much I'm just developing everything from zero.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we were talking about this from the beginning, and I think if you even leading into it with the AI content stuff, I continue to come back and Lauren, we've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah. Thank you for being a repeat.
Well, yeah. I mean, here's what's not changed.
Yeah.
What's not changed, and I don't think is going to change, is if you're creating unique content about your listings, about your services, about what people need to know about real estate, if you're creating unique content, it puts you 5 stories ahead of all of your competitors for lots of reasons. Number one, it's just that actual human consumers see that content and it's stuff they haven't seen before in a world where a bunch of stuff gets repeated in 10,000 different places, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's got value there. It also has a tremendous amount of value for the robots that run our lives. So
that will soon shortly.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing.
They don't already.
Yeah. We've been doing more with search engine optimization over the past year or so. You may have heard me say this before. I'm not sure if you ever did, but I used to not touch SEO with a 10-foot pole because I was very skeptical of the tactics that were being used to essentially game the search engines. I had a client about a year ago who came to me and said, look, I want to do SEO and I really want you to do it. Can you help us find someone that we can trust to do it? So we did. I've got a partner out in Portland who was doing some SEO work, and I worked with him, and we started doing it. So one of the things and it started working. It really, I mean, we were seeing palpable results for this client who was a new attorney well, not a new attorney, but an attorney with a new practice down in Southwest Virginia, who went from zero recognition to now is showing up in the key practice areas that he's doing. And
Alan, lost an
no,
Alan?
no,
just kidding.
but that's who you're competing with.
Right, you're like the
That's-
big guys on
yeah,
TV
That's who you're
and
trying to get.
Mark Hamill.
Yeah, and so, yes, and so faced with the Allen world, what became really clear to me is we really are creating content for these robots that Google is running and other platforms are running, and they still continue to put a tremendous amount of value in content they haven't seen in other places. And that's the amazing thing about these algorithms is when data storage is cheap, you can store all the data, right? And so these spiders, web crawlers, have access to everything else that's out there. And when they see something they haven't seen before, they're like, hey, you're not going to believe this, but this guy wrote something fresh that no one's seen before. And they actually elevate you in the organic search results because you put something fresh on the site.
Right.
And so the funny thing about it, the whole SEO thing is it's become, in the past, it really was like trying to game, and it still is to some extent, trying to game whatever the newest algorithm changes are. But it is also very much about, do we have fresh content? Does the fresh content have the right information on it? I don't know if I ever told the story back in the day when I was working for projectscore.com. It's years ago, it was Associate Press news style that most newspapers follow. One of the AP rules was if you're writing about your own town, you don't put a date line with the name of your town at the top of the story.
Okay.
So if I'm a reporter and I go to Philadelphia, my story is going to say Philadelphia, PA, or it'll say Philadelphia at the top of the story. But if I'm in Fredericksburg writing about Fredericksburg, I don't put Fredericksburg at the top of the story. And so, oddly enough, you could read through a whole, 20-paragraph article, and it might not ever say Fredericksburg because you don't put it at the top, and you just assume people know you're talking about Fredericksburg, and you might not have ever put the city in it. Well, when Google came to the forefront and started crawling content, we couldn't figure out why stories that we were absolutely out in front on weren't showing up in the search engines until we realized, well, they don't know us from Adam. They don't realize we're in Fredericksburg, and we didn't say Fredericksburg anywhere on the story. So as far as they're concerned, they don't even know where this thing happened. And so we had to change the way we were doing things.
Right.
And so I'm kind of telling people now, like, if you're writing content, make sure you're throwing little location hooks in there. You put in the name of the town, put the name of the county, put additional information about things that maybe you assume people are going to know. Well, sprinkle some of that in there because the robots need it.
Especially with the near me, the searches that everyone's doing,
right,
stuff
right.
near me.
Right.
And that's been one of the things with SEO that's happened over the past couple of years. The last algorithm change, the last actually couple of algorithm changes have been very, very location focused. And so it's real hard right now. It's actually really hard to do SEO for companies that have too broad of a reach because the algorithm right now is so geared towards local that you can't be a nationwide company and buy SEO. It's like, it's not a good thing to spend money on because you're not going to be able to get it. I've got a client who takes apart construction equipment, sells parts, used parts, and they serve the whole US. We tried to do SEO and it wasn't working. And it wasn't working because we would have had to buy like in every region. It was just going to be prohibitively expensive to do that kind of targeting. So yeah,
And what I like about SEO, like you said, though, if I'm a consumer and I type in something to search, and I wasn't thinking about this before, if I type in something to search, what am I going to type in, right? So as I'm writing my blog post, I try to think about that. Well, some of that should be in my title.
Right.
Even if that's not a title I would have come up with originally, I reword my title to fit what I think somebody's gonna look for.
Right.
And if I don't, then I'll be the only one reading my story.
Right.
So
So would you recommend any good tools for keyword research for agents as they're getting started?
I mean, I'll tell you what we do. I mean, we do Google AdWords for people. And so what I typically do if I want to learn more about keywords is I'll actually go and put a fake campaign in AdWords. Like I won't go through and actually buy it. But what I do is when you're doing AdWords, you get to this point in the dialogue where you can put a URL in and it'll go and check it and it'll pull suggested keywords out based on the content that's there. That's one thing that I do. And you can also put keywords in and have it suggest additional related keywords. Both of those tend to work fairly well for me. There's a tool called SEMrush. SEMrush. And there's another one. I'll check with Greg and I'll send it to you. You can distribute to everybody. There's a couple of tools he's been using. This is the guy that I work with on SEO stuff. But SEMrush is a
Okay, I've heard of that one before.
Yeah. No, we use Yoast.
It's a good plugin.
On WordPress sites.
Yeah, I think we have that on ours.
Now there's a new God, what is the name of that tool? There was a woman working with the city, Renee Dunn, who helped us when we're working on that redesign we did, the FXPG redesign, and she put a different SEO tool on that site.
Similar to SEMrush and Yoast is.
Let's see if I can figure out what the name of that thing was. Rank Math.
Okay.
So
You think it's better than Yoast?
I think it is.
Because
It's
the free Yoast doesn't really have that much to it.
Free
It's
Yoast.
like nothing. It's like add a keyword and that's like it.
Well, and the thing about Yoast is, as a tool, I find even the free tool is not bad, but you got to go do the work on it, and it's it's tricky and challenging. But no, Rank Math, I've been impressed with it. I think this is a paid license that we've got on this site, but I'll tell you, she's real sharp on this stuff, and she recommended this, and I saw it. Like, yeah, that's actually better than Yoast. But Yoast is great.
Yeah.
And there's a free version, and if you're doing WordPress, which most people are, it's definitely the way I would lean. Any other questions?
We've been having good luck. Some of our most popular blog articles have numbers in them, like 10 ways it pays to join a committee. Like that one's one of our top ones. And then also like, I think one of our articles explaining one of the code of ethics articles, those have done really well. So you'd be surprised at if you're writing about really niche topics or like what is going to take off, like what people are searching for. The benefits of being on a committee is one of the things, apparently.
Right.
Who would have thought that,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because the more obscure the topic, the better.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to write about something that's like really, really niche. You think about, I know there are realtors in town who do Lake Anna. Well, Lake Anna, if people are really interested in Lake Anna and they're thinking about buying a house there, they're probably going to consume a lot of information.
Do a lot of research on there.
They're going to do that kind of research. If this market being as transient as it is, I think again you run into that where it's like you're talking about places to live in this region and what some of the differences are and sort of talking through some of that. I think there's not a lot of that content floating around out there.
And this is very interesting because I had a conversation with a realtor the other day that's like, I want to serve all of Virginia. And I'm like, well, you need to at least pick out some keywords of maybe some metro areas or like your specific place, you know, because targeting everyone is going to be really hard than just, you know,
Yeah.
targeting a few individual places or something really specific.
And I remember being there at that point because you don't realize what you're saying when you say that because you want to service people and you want business for
You don't want to turn anyone away. You want to help
turn
everyone.
anyone away, but you don't really realize
That's not a good online strategy
Yeah.
for gaining business.
if you don't target someone, you end up targeting no one or serving no one. So you have to specialize for your marketing specifically. Even if you do decide to help somebody, for me, Fredericksburg is a distance for me because I work out of Woodbridge area.
Yeah.
So I don't target or market to people in Fredericksburg, but I do have friends here and I will, work with them
Yeah.
and come down here and do work, but I don't market there because one, you can't afford it. You can't market everywhere. It's
Right.
just financially impossible. So I market 2 areas in Woodbridge and Dumfries, right? And then in that way, I can afford to market, and then those people get to know me. And then if, like I said, if I end up working somewhere else, that's great. But I finally realized I have to focus on an area. Otherwise, it's everything that I'm trying to do, you can't do.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, but we're, the business I'm in is the same way. And what I found is by specializing, you gain contacts who then send you to places that you weren't originally specializing in. And you'll get some of those and you may eventually decide, you know what, I'm adding this to my specialization because I like doing this.
Right.
It's good for everybody. You get to
Yeah,
grow,
yeah.
they get to grow.
It's so funny because so my accountant leases the upstairs part of the upstairs office that we have now, and we started our businesses roughly the same time, and we had this conversation about like, when you started, you took everything you could get, and then you realized what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do, and you refined what you were reaching out for, what you were marketing for. And then in doing that, you discovered there were other things you liked too, and you added those. And so we're both doing work that we didn't think we were going to be doing before, because we've decided we liked it, and we are both not doing work that we used to do because we've decided, I don't want to do that.
Not as
Right,
much.
right.
I don't want to be in that region anymore. I don't want to drive through that traffic anymore. I don't want to, all of that sort of thing pops up, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I've sort of decided where I want to be, but it took that let me do everything approach in the beginning before I decided what I didn't want to jump on.
Oh, I don't want to limit myself. I want to serve everybody. I need the business, so I'm not going to restrict myself. But then that's what you run around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah.
Until you wake up to that, I think that's just the natural progression.
Yeah.
But get through that quickly because it ain't the way to be. I guarantee you. But one of our SEO that I found recently is all-in-one SEO. And they're similar to Yoast and SEMrush. So.
Is it free?
They have a free version. That's what I'm on right now. They've got a lot more stuff you can do for the paid version, but I'm not on that one yet.
I will say that it's funny you say that. So one of the things that you talk about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. The other thing that we've learned a lot about is what are we willing to pay for and what are we not willing to pay for. And so, like for most of my clients, the paid version of Yoast has not really been something that has made sense for them.
Yeah.
But then for some people, you're like, oh yeah, absolutely, you should pay for that. I mean, there's things now that we happily pay for, plugins and stuff, because it's so much easier, and we were wasting so much time doing other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm actually, my hosting company, I'm getting ready to have this global security suite that sort of takes over what we've been using Cloudflare for. I think they're actually using Cloudflare to do it, and we're probably going to start paying for that. because it's going to make our lives easier over the long run. And so we're like, hey, yeah, okay, it's worth it. That expense is worth it. But I do find that people, particularly people who are starting out in lots of different fields, they do end up spending money on things they probably don't need, tech stuff, because they don't really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say most people can get by, like on a WordPress site, I would say, in my experience, most businesses who have a WordPress site, there's probably 1 or 2 plugins they're using that they should probably have the paid version of, and everything else they can get for free, you know. And we have, you know, and depending on what field you're in, that number goes up or down. You know, if you're in e-commerce, the month number's more like they're probably 4 or 5 plugins you're paying for, and the rest you're getting for free. And you know, we find the same thing with hosting. Like my hosting is pretty expensive because of what we do with it. But a lot of people overpay for hosting.
Yeah, before you came on, we were paying like $1,800 or something a month, like,
Yeah.
or like a year or something. It was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way too much. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, but we definitely see a lot of that where people pay a lot for. They pay a lot for certain things, and then not a lot for other things. We should be paying more for this.
Yeah.
Move-
Oh, it's funny,
shift that budget around.
I went up north for the mid-year legislative conference that they do, NAR does every year. It was at the Gaylord this year, and we had a guy present from one of the tech incubators that NAR runs. And he was saying, you know, at least for us, for comm directors, is like we need to kind of have like a technological slush fund so we can kind of see what new tools are out there that are, so we can kind of adjust and
Yeah.
dabble, but also, you know,
Right.
being on the edge of the market of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a good idea. I mean, we find that there are certain areas where we find our focus is as far as technology goes. So right now, we have more clients who are getting customer relationship management software, so CRM software, and I would say over the past 6 months, I've had probably 4 different clients say, I've got the CRM and I want all of my forms on my site to feed into my CRM. Okay. And most of these CRMs have some kind of what's called an API that lets you feed data into them, but it's non-trivial to do. It's not something you just plug in and it works. So lately we've been doing these integrations for people, and we found a tool the other day that's going to make it way easier for us to do it. So when you fill out a form, it just feeds the data to the CRM, no matter what CRM it is, as long as they have an API that they can do it.
That plugin I just found does just that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you using a CRM?
I am.
So what do you use?
Well, I was using Contactually.
Okay.
I don't want to go into that. But
No longer.
you're right. Our company's using, wow, just lost their name. Moxie. Moxie
Okay.
works.
Okay.
And but I left Contactually, and they're gone. But
Are they still in business?
they got bought up by Compass,
Okay.
and Compass recently shut them down.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that plugin? Let's see if I can find that's useful.
That might be it all on our
Yeah.
Facebook
we just
conversation.
wanna Hold
Is that-
everybody in.
Well, Lauren, you asked about the new Google Analytics.
Yes, Google Universe or whatever they're calling it.
I've learned not to learn the names of them because they're going to change it tomorrow. So just for Sandra, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not. Are you using Google Analytics?
Yes.
Have you switched?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
So by January, I think it is. Isn't that right?
I thought it was June. I thought it's like next month.
No.
Is it 6 months from now?
6 months from now, I think.
You sure? There was a prompt that said I needed to start doing stuff.
I think you need to start doing stuff,
Okay.
but I don't think you have to have it ready yet.
Well, I started it, but then I don't remember if I got to a point where I didn't finish everything, or there was another piece.
Okay.
It's like when you go to log into Google Analytics, it'll tell you, by the way, new stuff is happening or coming out. So you need to
They're
work on your-
changing the platform. And as I understand it, you are going to basically have a new account and your old report is going to be there historically, but it's not going to be integrated into the new report. And
Darn you, Google.
God, I hope it's not June because I have 80 sites.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's a new tag. It's a new reporting suite. Just like when we were looking at Facebook today, I logged into a site the other day, and I guess when we set it up, it was the new platform. So I went to look at a report, and I'm like, I have no idea where anything is because everything had moved around.
Right.
But it's this concept of sources or something like that, or data streams, I think, that's a little bit different. So the setup's not any harder than the old way of setting it up. It's still
But it probably
a tag,
did
it's still a
generate new
page.
code.
I think it generates new code, and I think the reports are different. I don't think you're going to be able to see your old report.
It's a bummer because I had some
in
custom
the new-
reports.
Yeah.
I wonder if, is that in response to the talk about cookies going away and all the
It's
other
hard to
changes?
say.
It's like,
It's really
are
hard to
they
say.
coming up with a new
Yeah. It is very possible.
platform or protocol that's different, so they can say we're not doing that anymore,
It's
even though they're
very
still
likely.
going to be doing it?
It's very likely.
Just going to change the way they're doing it so they can claim that they're not tracking you.
Yeah, it's very likely.
Yeah.
So,
But there's a plugin called Bit Integration,
okay,
and you might find that useful.
okay, cool. And that let you connect to the CRM. Okay. Yeah, we use Gravity Forms when we make forms on our
Okay.
site, which we love.
Mhm.
And Gravity Forms has an add-on to it called Webhooks that lets you do API connections. But we found something the other day called Gravity Flow, and it hooks to Gravity Forms, and it lets you create multiple steps when a form is submitted on what happens to the data in the form.
Okay.
And so right now I'm working on one that I actually have to connect to the API server with a username and password essentially. And then they send me back a security token. And then anything I want to do, like make a new lead, I need that token. And so I have to have multiple steps because I have to go get the token and then use the token. And Gravity Flow lets you do that. But it also does things like if this gets submitted, then do this, then show them another form.
Gotcha.
And so it's kind of a neat setup. But if you have forms on your site, or if you're using Jot forms and you want to not be using Jot forms, Gravity Forms is awesome.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorite plugins.
I was using FormFlow for a little while, but right now I'm tied into Airtable, so I just
Okay.
pump my stuff.
Okay.
Airtable.
Yeah. Airtable's cool. So Airtable's like a online spreadsheet.
Yeah, I've heard lots of people use it.
Yeah. I have a client. who
Workflows and
loves it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a publisher and he stores all of the book reviews and stuff in Airtable.
Yeah. I started it. I was working with a lady out in San Diego with my bots, and she introduced me to Airtable.
Okay.
So I got some of my bot stuff tied to my website, and then I got into it because I started doing more blogs.
Yeah.
So I have my blog distribution
Okay.
set up in Airtable.
Now, is your site using Divi?
Yes.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. There are 2 agencies in town who use Divi. We use it, and Websites for Anything uses it.
Okay.
And we share clients sometimes, so it's kind of cool because we have to work on one of their sites. We know exactly.
You're like,
what we're
whew,
doing.
Divi. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have a customer right now who we're doing some support on their site, but somebody else did the design work on it initially, and so I had to change something the other day. I was like, why can't you be on Divi? It's so much easier. And people don't really understand. They think it's a theme. I'm like, it's not really a theme. It's really more of a platform,
Right.
that makes everything easier to deal with in WordPress.
That skeleton, that backbone in there, and then
Yeah.
you even had themes. But
We've been joking. We're like, we should learn blocks because blocks is the new hotness in WordPress is how you're supposed to design stuff. And I've looked at some block stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's just not as good as Divi. It doesn't do as much.
Why work backwards?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's been good for us.
Yeah.
We've been on it for
Been
About
on
6
for a while
years
now,
now.
yeah. That's,
Since
oh
2017.
my God.
Can you believe
We're
it?
getting old.
Time's flying.
Well, thanks for joining us, Sandra. The recording will be available. I'm hoping to get it up maybe sometime tomorrow, and then I'll send it out.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll be looking forward to it, so I can catch up with the beginning. I'm
Of
taking my
course.
notes anyway, but thank you so much.
All right.
You're welcome. Bye, Sandra.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good one.